As a candidate, Mayor Lori Lightfoot pledged to overhaul the tax increment financing, or TIF system. Her administration today unveiled how it's beginning to make good on that promise. Chicago Tonight's Amanda Vinicky is here with more. Amanda, how is she beginning to make good on that promise?
Ferris, take a step back first. Those three letters, TIF, have caused a lot of controversy over the years. And before we get into why and what the mayor is doing about it, here's a brief refresher on what they stand for.
Is tax increment financing, and the easiest way to explain it is a TIF district is designated when you have a certain level of taxes in that area, and as economic development occurs, the incremental value in that district stays in that TIF district to fund economic development.
That incremental increase in property taxes, which would normally go to schools, park district, and so on, is instead sequestered and spent to further develop the land in the TIF. Deputy Mayor Mike Carr says when used properly to improve blighted areas, TIF can be a catalytic development tool. But critics have been in an uproar over two TIFs the city council approved just before Mayor Lightfoot took office. Using TIF, Chicago will spend billions to subsidize and support a pair of mega projects that will transform large parcels of undeveloped land, Lincoln Yards between Bucktown and Lincoln Park, and the 78 development in the South Loop along the south branch of the Chicago River, neither of which are perceived as blighted. The changes unveiled today will not reverse those decisions. Still, Deputy Mayor Mike Carr uses lofty language to describe the new standards, calling them
sweeping reforms to the TIF system in order to bring more transparency, accountability, and equity to the system in terms of how public dollars are administered.
A lot of buzzwords there, Amanda. Sweeping reforms, transparency, accountability. What specifically do these reforms do?
It's meant to create a new approach to decide how TIF money is administered, what it pays for. A committee led by Mike Carr and made up of other top members of the mayor's staff, including the chief equity officer, will review proposals for spending TIF dollars. This proposal calls for analyzing plans with an eye toward equity. While TIF money can and is spent on things like roads, bridges, and streetlights, it can also be spent on private projects. And here, the administration says it's going to get stricter and will only approve the expenses if projects would not go forward but for the TIF money.
Knowing that there's such attention in City Hall right now to trying to push TIF allocations in a more equitable direction and to push them further into areas like the south and west sides that have not been able to attract as much private investment, I think is very heartening.
That other buzzword, transparency, other changes are geared toward that. The city is going to publish an annual TIF guide, and then every month, Chicago will release what it's describing as user-friendly data to show how TIF money is spent.
For years, we've been unable to trace those money trails. We have not been able to follow the money. So knowledge is power. That's going to be very helpful.
For all of positive what she has to say about these changes, UIC professor Rachel Weber says the TIF program has grown so immensely. It's huge. There's 136 of these districts that it is difficult to corral. And she says there's a long way to go. Critics aren't as generous, nor are they as patient. Again, TIF stands for tax increment financing. The Civic Lab's Tom Tresser has a different definition.
TIFs stand for taking it from schools. So they're extracting property taxes in a secretive slush fund manner.
He calls the mayor's overhaul window dressing, a mere diversion, he says. The only way to reform TIFs, Tresser says, is by eliminating them.
TIFs and justice are incompatible. The TIFs hoard the money in the wealthy communities. I can't repeat that enough. And they starve the poor ones.
He's not alone in that criticism. The Chicago Teachers Union, a perennial foe of the mayor, knocks Lightfoot for advancing the changes without community input and says if the mayor were truly serious about TIF reform, she should sunset downtown TIF districts early. Now, the Lightfoot administration says this is just the beginning and more changes to the TIF system are coming down the pike. In the future, they're going to roll out stricter standards for creating and ending TIFs.
All right, so this is just the beginning. We'll have to keep following this because the previous administration said a lot about TIF transparency and accountability as well.
This is the first time.
Not the first time. All right.